Well, last Saturday night, W5, CTV's award-winning investigative program, detailed the plight of Pavel Kulisek. He's a Canadian who's been held in a Mexican jail for 13 months now under very dubious circumstances. The charge is being part of an organized crime cell. The evidence? Well, the evidence is the testimony of a former Mexican policeman who has twice been convicted of corruption, and that's the only evidence. The prosecutor in this case, well, unfortunately, he's in prison right now because he's been charged with taking bribes from a drug cartel. When the case was presented to the Minister of State, Peter Kent, on W5, here's was his response.
Are you aware of the charges against him of his arrest, the circumstances behind that?
I'm not. Indeed.
But it certainly speaks to the justice system and the kinds of people who are involved in bringing charges against him.
We have to have faith that due process will prevail.
You're also dealing with a sovereign state and a judicial system that is obviously corrupt from top to bottom.
Well, not from top to bottom.
When a Canadian is charged in a place like Mexico, does your department, your officials say, you know, we're looking at all this material, it just doesn't make sense?
No.
Why not?
Because the nation of Mexico is a sovereign state. We stand back and we let due process take its course.
Even if that due process is a corrupt system or a system that moves like a snail?
Anyone who visits Mexico should be aware of the very different nature of many aspects of Mexican society.
But when you get stuck in a jackpot that's not of your own making, is that what you say to the Canadians? Well, they're tough.
The Canadian government doesn't interfere in the affairs of sovereign governments.
Well, the issue was brought up in question period, and here was the response of the minister in question period. Take a listen.
The honourable member also again seems today to be using the research of a second-rate current affairs program which presented a very selective, one-side tabloid example of journalism. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the House that we are actively monitoring Mr. Kulisek's case and we're liaising with Mexican authorities to ensure his right to due process is respected. Very good.
Well, joining me now is the Minister of State, Peter Kent. Mr. Kent, you have taken a shot at the program that brought this to the attention of Canadians.
Program I used to be a producer.
How long were you a producer there for?
Oh, a year or two.
A year or two. Okay. Listen, you've accused them.
We always practiced advocacy journalism, but we also fairly used all of the facts in a case. Not
That's
only
great.
the
Okay,
ones.
listen, I want to get to this. You're saying this was shoddy journalism.
It was selective use of the facts.
Well, you said shoddy journalism.
It was shoddy journalism.
Fine. Okay, so you said shoddy journalism. What fact or facts did they get wrong?
Well, they didn't use large parts. I gave them, against advice, more than half an hour of my time to explain and to broaden their familiarity with the case. Any number of those answers weren't used. They trivialized. The consular services.
What facts did they get wrong?
You can call me Peter, Tom.
Well, whatever you're called, but what facts did they get wrong?
They selectively misrepresented the consular support of Mr. Kulisek in his prison since his arrest a year ago.
They misrepresented a fact about what the Canadians did?
And they misrepresented the Mexican government.
Show me one. Where did they misrepresent the Mexican government?
Well, you didn't see all of Victor's attempts to engage, but he said the Mexican government is corrupt from top to bottom. That is slanderous. From the president down, there are men and women in government and in the security forces who risk their lives every day, who have died trying to fight the crime and drug cartels.
Mr. Kent, can we stick with the facts here? What single fact did W5 get wrong about the case of Pavel Kulisek?
It was a selective misrepresentation. The entire case was tabloid journalism of the worst sort. There was no balance.
What balance? Balance can come in when you say that a fact
They accused the Canadian government of not supporting.
Yes,
there are any number of facts.
Give me one.
They accused the government of not providing adequate consular services to Mr. Kulisek. That in itself is a gross misrepresentation. I mean, it's simply not true. I mean, it's a lie. And the explanation offered in the interview was not used in the program.
Okay. You say that his lawyer has been holding up the process. Is that right? I mean, that was a point that you made.
There have been appeals. There have been appeals made.
Well, in fact, there's been one appeal. Do you think that's too many?
On the grounds, I'm not going to get into arguing this case.
Well, it's not a question of arguing, it's a question of facts. Do you know that there was only one appeal?
I don't know that there was more than one appeal.
Well, why did you say in the House then that his lawyer, Pavel Kulisek's lawyer, has been holding things up?
Look, I'm not going to get into the background and the record of Mr. Kulisek's lawyer. It is worthy of greater journalistic investigation.
But you did in the House, and yet you didn't know that there was only one appeal to the courts.
Look, Tom, you can't split hairs. This is hot dog tabloid journalism of the worst sort. Victor did this when he covered the Brenda Martin case irresponsibly, never reported that W5 went off on a crusade, and she eventually pled guilty and was returned home to Canada. One of the questions asked in the interview was, why didn't you get up on a great white horse and ride to the rescue of this Canadian? My answer, which wasn't used in the report, was, Victor, there's no room on the white horse, you're taking it all.
Oh, well, okay. Look, you know on the Brenda Martin case, and maybe Mexican justice is something that needs to be investigated.
It is not Canadian justice.
It is not Canadian justice, and you know very well what happened in the Brenda Martin case. You plead guilty to get out of Mexico, and you should know that full well. It's not a question of saying you actually did it. Come on, you know that.
The Department of Foreign Affairs, the Government of Canada says to Canadians, don't go into dark alleys, don't go onto abandoned beaches late at night, don't associate with people who are strangers to you.
I want to give you one last opportunity because I want to be fair. Can you give me one fact, just one fact,
I'll give you
about the case? About the case.
Well, we're talking about the entire story. What was grossly unfair to Canadian foreign affairs professionals was the broad, barefaced statement that Canada is not representing Mr. Kulisek with full consular services. That is a lie. By any measure, that's a lie. And if I could just say at the same time, the story also exploited the human tragedy of Mr. Kulisek's family in Vancouver. I mean,
how so?
Well,
how so?
Basically, what they're doing is they're using a family which is experiencing terribly tragic times right now.
Yes.
Any accused family in any situation, but particularly this family.
What's your point?
They're forced into very difficult times. They skewed the story around the victimization and the plight of his family rather than the case that stands in Mexico.
I think as a former journalist, you might agree with me that a charge of biased journalism always has a bit more weight to it when you can produce some evidence in terms of facts, which I've given you a number of chances to do and you haven't been able to do it.
It was shoddy journalism along the same lines as the Brenda Martin story, which was another hatchet job by the same hatchet man.
I gave you every opportunity. Thanks very much. Minister Kett, we're going to come back right after this.